Let's talk about driving. I often get the question, am I okay to drive, or when am I going to be okay to drive, either during postoperative visits or during regular clinic visits? And I'll say first, if you've had recent surgery, the day of an outpatient surgery, you should not be driving simply because of the anesthesia. But otherwise, I approach the question from two perspectives. So, part one would be simply, are you legal to drive per the South Carolina state requirements for a residential permit as opposed to, say, a commercial permit? And that's relatively straightforward because I can take your vision on any given visit and just tell you whether you meet those criteria. I will mention that there's not a peripheral vision requirement for the state residential permit. And you could debate whether or not that's a loophole or not, or whether there should be one. But if you choose to drive, and for example, you have advanced glaucoma, some patients have, a loss of all of their peripheral vision. They're looking through tiny, tiny little pinholes, even though they may be 20/20 on the eye chart. And interestingly, in that scenario, they're considered legally blind by their visual field, but they're actually legal to drive. So if you choose to drive when you have a significant loss of peripheral vision, you need to be very careful and constantly sweeping those blind spots, whether they're to the side of you or up and down. Some patients are just missing the upper half of their vision, and they're at risk of flying through a traffic light that they didn't see. And I've had patients describe that before. So you have to constantly be sweeping both horizontally and vertically at times, depending on where those blind spots are, if you choose to drive in that situation. Which is why I think the more important question, and this is the part two, is should you be driving? And that's ultimately something where you have to listen to your gut. And the scenario I give everybody is, do you feel confident that you would see a toddler chasing their ball in the street and avoid hitting them? And if you have any doubt answering that question, you shouldn't be driving. And please listen to that. I think that's the most effective scenario that I can apply. I've had patients who are legal to drive with those advanced visual field defects, and I'll ask, are you driving? And one said a few months ago, I gave that up last year when I almost killed somebody. Don't put yourself in that situation. You don't want to put yourself or somebody else at risk of undue harm, and especially afterwards have a nagging question of whether or not you were being responsible with your vision. I know that's a very heavy thing to throw out there, but we're talking about life and death situations here. I know it's a sensitive topic because we're talking about a patient's independence, which is what makes this such an important topic. So, and it's something I'll help you navigate in the clinic too. But these are my general approaches. Are you legal to drive? Yes, we can answer that pretty straightforward on any given visit. Should you be driving? The more important question that you need to really listen to your gut and err on the side of caution. Don't be falsely reassured. I'll have patients say, well, I'm only going a mile from my house or down these roads that I know really well. You can have devastating car wrecks 50 yards from your mailbox. I think that's falsely reassuring to talk about roads you're familiar with, or roads that are, not far from your house. So I wouldn't be reassured by that. I get where you're coming from, but just trust your gut and you'll be okay. Err on the side of caution, be responsible, and I'll help you navigate it.